You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Okay, it's a day here at Fika. All right, so for some of you, welcome to Fika. Mark and I have already been here for a while, but this is the second go. So we're all going to just settle down
good.
And start again.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. All right. It's nice to have staff off screen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. Our guest today is Mark Ryan. In a career that spans over 40 years, he's been an actor, author, singer, and action director. He's been Hell Gates in Black Sails, a West End leading man, the creator of the Wildwood and Greenwood Tarots, Nazir on Robin of Sherwood, and 5 robots in the Transformers franchise. Mark and I have had Fika before, and listening to his journey is both entertaining and inspirational. It's full of pirates, knights, outlaws, and intrigue. It reads like a book, a colorful, eclectic, and curious tale that he narrates best himself. So I'm going to stop talking and encourage Mark to start. Welcome to Fika, Mark.
Nice to be back. How are you, Vicky?
It
seems like only moments ago that we were chatting about my fascinating life. You know.
Stop joking. It is fascinating, Mark. We're selling this show. You know how they say there's those people that you don't see for a long time, and then it's like you just saw the moments before. Well, apparently
I think I'm having an out-of-body experience. I think I'm having the universe is telling me something. You know.
To let people in, if you didn't know, and I apologize for the late start. Somehow, in another dimension, I didn't even know it was possible. I ended up in the wrong studio. And so this is our second starting of Fika, and I apologize, and though I think it's the fairies, and and Mark says it may be.
And you don't know.
Thank you all for sticking around to hear what we have to say today. Okay, so Mark. We need to start again. So, Mark, you've lived an interesting, fantastical life. I've got to get serious. I don't know why. Can you tell us how that happened? How is that possible?
Well, it's very as an odd thing because, like we were talking earlier on, when you're kind of in the middle of it, it's almost, you can't see the wood for the trees. You're not actually aware sometimes of what is around you. You're just kind of, very focused and very ambitious, as I was. I was a very ambitious young man, not to be rich or famous. I just wanted to live my life as fully as I could and experience as much as I could of it. So I was very sort of ambitious to open doors, and that's basically what happened. Was in the sense that to reiterate the story, because I'll give Ray the credit again. We were sitting around a dinner table one day, Ray Winston, I think Jason, and maybe Clive. We were just talking about our lives and what we'd done with our lives and the various bits of achievements that we'd had, and obviously we'd all crashed into various successful things in our lives. And I said, at the time, I said, God, we've been lucky. When you think about, what we've been and gone and done, we've been very lucky in life. And Ray said to me, no, you're not. We're not lucky, Mark. You make your own luck. You create your own luck. And I said, well, all right, then we've been fortunate that we've had the opportunities, you know, to do what we've done with our lives and careers. And I said, you know, when you think of all the barriers and all the things that are in the way in life, getting from where you are to where you want to go. And Ray said something which actually I thought about profoundly for about a week afterwards. He says, yeah, there are barriers in life. There's always barriers in life. The difference is we just didn't see them. So we weren't aware they were there and we went straight through them. And I had to think about that ages after that. I was thinking about how much of that is true in my own life. And I kind of went, wow, that is true. I was very focused, say not to be rich or famous. I was very focused on making the use of every talent that I had and pushing it as far as I could push it. And it seems to be that the universe likes that. It reacts to that. As I say, there's certain spiritual paths that believe that you have the writing of your own fate, and that I believed that, and I just wasn't even aware that I believed it. I just kept doing it, and it seems to be the more that you create opportunity, and the more that you step beyond your own boundaries, and you create something for the first time for yourself, the more the universe opens up possibilities and probabilities. It seems to be almost like a subatomic particle field, like the Sheldrake morphic field that you're entering, that you create these waves, these waveforms of possibilities and probabilities. And it's I guess a framework that I've used since my youth to try and understand how my life and the universe function for me and functions with me, if you like. And that suddenly came, okay, well, that's probably what I was doing. I was very sort of focused, almost blinkered in a way. I mean, I've been accused of being, when I was younger, of not being a particularly very nice person. And I think I was a nice person. I just think I was... I was very focused on what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the best singer I could be. And I'd worked the working men's clubs in England, which are very rough and very tough, and a real challenge for anybody that wants to try and get into the business in those days. The social and working men's clubs in Northern England were hard, but they were actually a great place to hone your skills and learn about audiences and about contact with audiences. And I just wanted to be the best singer I could be. And so I was sort of warned by many people when I wanted to go to London. They were saying, yeah, but London's full of the best singers. You know, they're great singers in London. You're going to run into the best. And I was like, okay, let me find out. Let's find out how good they are. And so I ended up, you know, as well as doing Dean, of course, I ended up doing 4 years in Evita, playing Magaldi, and then Che Guevara, which to me is one of the most vocally challenging parts that I could have played for myself as a young man in a West End show. So I got to break that little barrier, if you like. And it just seemed to go on from there.
Now, Mark, is there a recording out there somewhere of you in Evita?
There's several. I'm actually on the original London cast recording, because when the show opened in '78, I was the original Magaldi. On this night of 1,000 stars, I was the original Magaldi. And then not on the White Album, because that was Tony Christie, who was somebody I used to go around and steal his act. I give him full credit for that. I've said it many times publicly. I used to follow Tony Christie around the Northern Club circuit and steal his act. And ended up playing Magaldi in the West End premiere, directed by Harold Prince, of course, with David Essex and Elaine Page. And here's an example of one of those things. I wanted to audition for Shay. I played Magaldi for almost 2 years, about 18 months in, getting on for 2 years into playing Magaldi, which I was loving it. I was loving life in Soho in those days. It was a very eclectic, wonderful place, Soho. And I was in a hit show. I had the first time massive West End show. So I was enjoying being Magaldi, but I wanted to audition for Shay. And I discreetly asked about it, because Gary Bond, who took over from David Essex, who played, I think did about 3 months, 4 months, David, and lovely bloke, lovely man, David Essex. And Gary came in and he did about a year, and he was about physically and mentally exhausted. He told me, he said, I can't do this. I'm physically exhausted. I've got to have a rest. So I wanted to audition for it. And I was told by friends, and I mean friends, I didn't take it as an insult. They said, you're 24, so I'm 23 or 24. I look different because I had short hair. I actually had hair at one time in my life. I know now that's a bit of a shock. I had short hair, and I didn't have a beard, and so people were kind of like, "Don't embarrass yourself, don't," because this is a big part. You know, and that was what got me, was don't embarrass yourself. And so I went, okay. So I went and bought a combat jacket, and I got the wig lady upstairs to make me a Che Guevara wig. And I actually painted on, stipple brushed a beard onto my face, the Che Guevara beard. And I borrowed the beret of Gary's beret, and I auditioned for Harold Prince. And I don't quite know how I managed to get in. I think the stage manager, Sam Match, who's still a friend of mine, managed to go. Harold Prince went, "Is there anybody else?" And Sam went, "Yeah, we've got." And so by the time I was on the stage and actually singing "Oh What a Circus," I think I was halfway through "Oh What a Circus." They played it, and I was singing it, and I was halfway through it before Harold Prince realised it was me, and he stopped and he went, "Mark, is that you?" I said, "It's me," and he let me get through it, and I sang it all, and he sort of said, "You cheeky." Anyway. He gave me the part, so I ended up playing Che Guevara then for 2 years, and been sent to New York to steal Mandy Patinkin's Che Guevara, which I actually went and took notes from Mandy Patinkin. I've tried to thank him, but he's over the years and sent him little notes and said, I stole your Che Guevara for Harold Prince and put it on the West End stage, and that was another 2 years of my life. So I lived roughly 4 years in the show back to back. Was McGaldy and Shay.
So, I mean, a lot of people are not going to connect you to that with the other things that you have done. So it's kind of cool to hear about. And if you could send the link with you were going to send another link. I can't even remember what that was now. If you could send that link my way.
There is actually, there is a recording, a bootleg recording, which is floating about somewhere of me actually singing Shay. Obviously, I'm on the original album that was done with Elaine Pace singing Night of 1,000 Stars. But there is actually a bootleg floating about. I have it on reliable wires. There is and I think legal. Listen, I've just been sent another link of Wildwood Tarot with somebody on Etsy selling you another version of Wildwood Tarot. There's dozens of them. There are dozens of illegal counterfeit versions of Wildwood Tarot. That's a whole other story. We can talk about that as much as you like.
Yeah, because I have something to say about that.
Oh, it's absolutely rampant, and I'm happy to go into why I'm going to publish Greenwood myself, because for this very reason. Yeah, so there is a bootleg that was somebody.
Is that on YouTube? Because
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's something that collectors have that are Evita buffs, and who are not going to shop the person that they got it from and that kind of stuff. So so I think it's people who are Evita and West End musical enthusiasts that have these copies of various casts singing.
See, I told you there was intrigue. People, I promised intrigue, and now we have intrigue. Okay,
intrigue. Intrigue I have, trust me. But intrigue I have, even more so in the last. Funny enough, in the last few months, since the whole UAP thing has exploded, UFO thing has exploded. Funny enough. Anyway, so long that we'll go back to that if you like later on.
Okay, so we started off. We have to have some difference here. So we started off with the whole Wildwood counterfeit thing.
Yep.
Counterfeit thing. Okay, so just as a segue, for people who may not know, counterfeit. Well, first of all, this is like the picture, the book from the Wildwood Tarot.
There you go.
And for those that can see it. And counterfeit is a big thing in the tarot industry. Now, I don't know why, because when you get a counterfeit deck, they're usually in saran wrap. They're going to be smaller than the regular cards are. They're not as tough and you don't get the fabulous book where you learn that Mark Ryan grew up playing in Sherwood Forest and become a fan for life with. And we have seen them where we are, and we have approached the seller and said, like, just, these, why are you selling counterfeit of the tarot? And they're like, well, I didn't know they were counterfeit. Now, you don't get these things and order them they're selling them for $10. So what are they getting them for? $5? Like, they have to know they're counterfeit, Mark. And that's all I have to say on it. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the damage they're doing to the industry is massive. And I know people think, well, I'm getting it. I'll say it because I know people are going to jump up and down about it. I'm going to get hate mail about it. Most of them are Chinese. And there are a couple of European ones. We've seen one that's been sold out of Ireland, but most of them are Chinese copies. And some of them proudly proclaim that made in China, written in China. They just simply take our names off it, call it something else, and proudly proclaim produced in China. So I'm afraid to say most of them are Chinese counterfeits, and there's lots of them. But the damage that is doing to the industry is that, for instance, we're just doing a new project for Sterling in New York, John Matthews and I and Yvonne. We've just done a new thing called the Sherwood Oracle, which comes out next year. And it's the money that has to be invested to get that produced. It takes a long while to get that back, to earn that back through sales. And if somebody's buying a cheap knockoff for $10, right, then the one that's being sold for $29.95, they might not choose to buy that. They choose to buy one. And it is to just be clear, it is illegal. It's a theft, not just a theft of copyright. It's a theft from the artist as well. So it's a theft of everything. And it's under international law. It's illegal. And we try and knock them down. It's like playing whack-a-mole. Every time we whack one over, another one pops up over here. I've just been sent another one right now. And then people write to me, which is kind of interesting and bizarre and ironic. And they write to me and go, oh, I bought your deck and I can't get this thing to work when I'm supposed to download the book. And I'm saying, well, that's because we don't have a thing to download the book. You buy the book with the deck. Yes, but it won't work. And you in the thing, it says that you zoom this thing and go to, and you can, I've got the book with, I went, you bought a counterfeit. You didn't buy it from Sterling or Welbeck in London or Sterling in New York. You bought a counterfeit. I'm not responsible for that. Sorry about that. They get very upset about that kind of thing. And blame me.
No, don't blame Mark, okay? People don't blame Mark. Don't blame Mark for anything. Okay? Just let him go. Just let him go. Yeah. But that's exactly the point. I mean, I respect you and John immensely. You know that. And I care about you guys. But Yvonne and Will, like, they make, this isn't the best one, but I mean, they make like 78 pieces of art. I don't even know how long that would take. 78 pieces of art to put on these cards. And they don't deserve to get ripped off. Like,
ripped off.
No, I can't even imagine how long that would take. So, and Will Worthington's work is amazing. And I just looked up Yvonne Gilbert. Is that how I said?
Yeah.
Gilbert.
Yeah.
And her because I wanted to imagine what the Sherwood Oracle would look like, since I haven't seen it yet.
It's stunning. It's stunning, let me tell you.
I was looking at her illustrations, and they look like old storybooks, like back in the day. That nostalgia, that fantasy, that is that what they look like on the cards, or am I totally offline here?
Yeah, no. You're actually. I'm just going to put a light on because because we're a little bit later than expected. I'm just going to put a little light. There we go. Look at that. Have a little light there. Shed a little light on things. Because it was getting dark in here. And her work is so detailed, and so it literally leaps off the page at you. It's like Will's work was fantastic for Wildwood. He did such a good job. they have to go into this in the detail and the concentration to be able to make that come alive. And yes, her work. I was actually going to send you a couple of prints, but I actually didn't get time to write to Sterling and say, can I have permission to show you some stuff? We are going to do a full launch of the thing next year, and we'll probably have permission to do that. I don't want to do that without Yvonne's permission, though, until we've got the whole thing finally proof done, which we have. I mean, it's more or less all been signed off on now and put in, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and just to have somebody steal it and sell it for $10 is actually kind of heartbreaking. But it's more about the damage that it's doing to the esoteric industry, because the more that this happens, the more or the less that people will be willing to put up the kind of money it takes to produce new materials, new stuff like this. So it's very difficult. It's a real problem. The publishing industry is suffering anyway, and this is not helping.
No. So the moral of this story is: do not buy counterfeit.
Please, please. Nobody's getting rich off of this. Trust me. Nobody. John Matthews and I and Avon and Will or nobody. Nobody's getting rich off of writing esoteric books about tarot cards or oracles. Trust me. I won't be buying, my $4 million Ferrari out of the proceeds of this. We do it out of love and because it's about expressing something that we experience in our lives more than anything. And again, because of the fandom, the loyalty of the fandom, we like to keep pushing out stuff and going, think about this, look at this, it's some new art, blah, 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 blah. So nobody's retiring, in the villas in south of France with the $3 million yachts parked up. It's a labor of love, trust me. And just buy the real thing.
Do, because there's several things out there that you've worked on, and the workbooks and that John has worked on, and they help people. Okay. The Wildwood Tarot, I fell in love with it. It's on my top, if not my favorite, depending on, the mood. The thing has helped. Okay. I would probably not be sitting here doing this radio show if it wasn't for this, because it tells you to get animated, to go for it, to follow that arrow. The imagery is so fantastic. And this is another fear. If we don't pay those artists, we're going to end up with computer generated art on this kind of thing, and it doesn't have the same soul.
It doesn't have the same soul, and I've seen some of that, and I've been shown some of that, and it doesn't resonate with me. Just on the point that you were making there, about what you were saying, it's Wildwood particularly. One of my stances when we started to do this, John and I, because obviously it grew out of the Greenwood Tarot, which is a whole other discussion. Wildwood, I wanted, and I said to John, I want it to be a usable, practical device.
That's exactly why I like it.
That people can look at and use and come back and go, wow, that actually it was helpful, not something that was amorphous. And the reason that I did that was because I think I bought my first real tarot deck. I think it was a Rider-Waite probably in 78 or 79 in Los Angeles at the Bodhi Tree bookstore, the much gone now, lamented Bodhi Tree bookstore. And I was trying to work with it, and there was another one, somebody recommended one. I won't say the name, except what I found was it was so chaotic that I couldn't relate to it. There was just the imagery was just so like, I don't understand what that is supposed to say. And also, I think we've just discussed before, it was based on Kabbalah. Now, I'm not a Kabbalah person. I don't know why. Kabbalah doesn't speak to me naturally. But what did was the Wheel of the Year. And what did was the nature aspect of it with the animals. And the places that we use, like Wayland Smith and the Offington White Horse, and those sorts of things, spoke to me. They that concept of why the places were there, and something to do with the memory of the actual land itself, which I'll come on to that as well if you like. But there's something about that. There's a resonance of memory that is left in the very land itself, relating to Stonehenge and Avebury Stone Circle. It taps into kind of an earth type telluric energy or whatever. So that's what I wanted to get. When John and I started working on it, I wanted people to be able to read it and go, oh, that's actually helpful. Oh, I understand that. Oh, that means maybe I should try this. But I didn't want to wrap it up with the concept of fate. I wanted the person themselves to make the decisions and go, oh, that's kind of a warning, or maybe that's an opportunity, or maybe, So I wanted to go that route with it, and it seems to have been pretty successful. So,
Well, that's an important thing with tarot, is that a lot of people don't understand. They just see it as this is what's going to happen. But I've always seen it more of a heads up, a guide, a way to avoid things. I know when I have done tarot readings in the past, you start your spiel and I say, just remember, this is not what's going to happen. It's just giving you an idea what could happen, and you can change your life whenever you want to. And someone would say, what? I can change my life? And I was just very confused and possibly wanted to shake them. So I had to give up tarot reading. But it is something people think that the cards, I've never saw the cards that way. I see them as, I'll go this direction or that. They're telling me what's going to happen if I don't smarten up or whatever. Or I can change my mind.
But there is a real scientific reason for that. I mean, when I read for people, I try to explain to people, look, the layout of the cards, when you first do the layout, and when I read for people, I don't even want to know what the question is. It doesn't.
It's true. I can affirm that because I've had a reading from Mark and he doesn't ask what the question is.
I don't need the question. I mean, the cards are going to relate to what you're asking. And so, but they are a snapshot of the situation that you are in and where you are emotionally and psychologically at that moment. Now, as soon as you actually look at the spread of the cards and you hear what the reading is regarding the cards, and if they relate to your question or inquiry, whatever, great, because that's obviously very helpful. I think only in 30 years since Greenwood, I've only ever had a couple say, I don't understand any of this. None of this is relatable. I can't relate to it. And they then called me actually later on, because I was in San Francisco, and they called me and said, we just wanted to call you and tell you that actually we were driving home, just went, oh, actually, everything you said is related to this. We hadn't actually asked that question, but what you actually answered was another situation in our lives that we are dealing with, and we hadn't related it to that at all. And I said, well, sometimes, I know it sounds weird, it's the question you don't ask that is in the back of your conscious mind that somehow leaks into this panpsychic universe that we apparently are in. And whether you like it or not, you're going to get the answer that you need, not what you want. And so that does actually happens. And however, as soon as you observe it, the act of observing the particle changes the particle. So you've been given a snapshot of the situation as it is right then when you ask the question, which means you have free will. You can go, well, I might not do that then. I might do this, or I might do that, or I know what that person is doing. And you can change. And the act of observing the particle changes the particle. And the act of observing the layout and the cards changes your reaction to it.
Yeah, no, the simple act of asking yourself what it is you want to know, or asking the cards, are going to change everything just in itself, because you've already started a different path than what you were on. So yes, you can change your life, people. Okay.
It's okay. It's allowed.
It's allowed. Although people might not think that you're a very nice person, like Mark when he was younger and was prime focused. He was nice. Prime he was directed. Just focused. Yeah, prime directed. This is what Mark's doing.
I've been reminded. Trust me, I've been reminded more than once. You were a bit, edgy. Yeah, well,
I love Ray's introduction of, is that? Yeah, Ray's.
That's in Hold Fast. Yeah,
of Hold Fast. You have to get this book just to read what Ray said about him. Okay.
He's a good mate, trust me. And it's like all good friends. We still talk to each other this way. We still literally rip each other to pieces, but it's done with the most real loving endearment, and I mean that. We're
Yes.
still friends after all these years, and that's how we were on the set. We were the merry men. We were like a right little firm, as we say, in London, in South London, a right little firm, and we were a right little gang, and we were all very, I think, the same way.
But I mean, that probably contribute to the series, Robin of Sherwood. I'm not sure if we mentioned that because you would have been like the same age. So I mean, the Merry Men were just a group of men trying to make a difference in the wildwood, but they still had their fun and antics.
It was brilliant, I have to say, and I have to give a shout out to Paul Knight, who passed away a little while ago, and Esther Charkham, who was the casting director on it and later became a producer. It was brilliantly cast. I mean, everything about the show was brilliantly done. And I know it's weird now. You look, Mark's just talking about it like that because it was, he was in it. No, everything about it. Richard Carpenter. I've never been approached by a writer like Richard Carpenter who actually called me. And that story about me going from Edmund the Archer to Nazir the Saracen is a true story. But a lot of people don't know that he actually called me, Kip, and he said, "Well, we got you. I didn't write this like this. For the first 3 scripts are written. You have no dialogue. I don't know what we're going to do with the characters. Do you actually know? Have you got any ideas?" Basically, he was the first writer, probably the only writer that would ever call an actor and go, "Have you got any ideas?" And I actually said to Kip, I said, "I've just finished reading Runciman's history of the Crusades. There's 3 volumes of Sir Stephen Runciman's history of the Crusades, and in there's a whole theme of the history of the Knights Templar and the cult of the Assassins and their relationship, because they worked together. They were very similar organizations in many ways. So the cult of the Assassins and the Templars worked for each other and traded ideas. That's the astrolabe was a seagoing navigational tool that the assassins had, and they swapped esoteric ideas, medicine, the Hospitallers, cult of the Hospitaller, called the Knights Hospitallers. They swapped medical ideas, philosophical ideas, spiritual ideas. They traded a lot together, which sounds weird, one being an extremist Islamic and the other being an extremist Christian. But they did. And so we talked about that. And Kip said, well, maybe we should make him something like that. I said, why not make him an assassin? You've got, whether you like it or not, you have a Muslim merry man. So why don't I make him an assassin and a renegade? And he said, well, I have no dialogue. How are we going to do this? I said, I don't need the dialogue. Give me the action.
You didn't.
Give me the knife throwing, the sword fights, the horse riding, all of that. Give me all of that stuff, the tracking. Give me all the physical stuff. I will speak through the character via his actions. Trust me. And that's how the character was developed for the show.
You don't need dialogue when you have that look and can throw a knife that well. Okay, it was just like, clear out. He's here. He's taking care of business. We don't laugh at you, but we laugh at that portrayal. Because it was just like, here comes the look, here comes the knives, it's over. Okay, we'll move on. It worked for Eastwood, right?
Yeah, well. Well, maybe I shouldn't say this, but anyway, no, I did step over Clint Eastwood once at Warner Brothers Studios. He was sitting in his lodge, and David Valdez, who had produced a film for him called White Under Black Heart, and Clyde Mather was in it, and I think he's the only man that got to beat up Clint Eastwood and survives the film. And so I was going down there for a meeting to chat with David Valdez, and as I was walking towards the door, there was 3 characters in suits, or 2 or 3 chaps, and I couldn't see his face, but it was somebody sitting across the doorway with his foot up just against the doorway, like sitting literally on the floor across this doorway, and these 3 gentlemen in suits obviously getting a talking to about something. And as I was walking to the door, because it's the only door I could see for the entrance, I literally went, "Excuse me, gentlemen," and I stepped over this figure and I looked down, and it was Clint Eastwood, and he kind of said, "Go ahead, make my day." Go right ahead. Oh. And you know, like when you see somebody that you go, oh my God, I just stepped over Clint Eastwood.
It's a passing thought. I just stepped over Clint Eastwood. You know, it happens to anyone.
Yeah, there you go.
So okay, let's follow this trail though. And so doing Robin of Sherwood, there was a lot of like it was with Hearn and a lot of spiritual stuff behind that in a way. Did that encourage you on that particular path with the tarot cards and things, or do you think it was already a part of you?
It was already a part of me. It was already in my psyche. What Robin of Sherwood did was, and again, sometimes the universe nudges you in these directions, was that to me, I know it sounds weird, but I did grow up in the middle of all of this. I mean, South Yorkshire is replete, not just with legends of Robin Hood, but of everything else you can think of. You know, it goes all the way, obviously, to the Normans, the Norman castles, and the Romans, and pre-Romans, the Celts, you know, the Brigantian Celtic culture. So you kind of just grow up with it, and it's kind of just seeps it into your brain somehow as a kid. And I was always fascinated by it. So I had no problem absorbing this information and this aspect of it. And I used to get invited to fan conventions, which I still do. And every now and again, someone would say about some aspect of Robin of Sherwood, whether it was Ern the Hunter or the mystical aspects of the show. And I was able to talk about it because it was there. It was just lodged in the back of my mind when I was to talk about Ern the Hunter and the legends of Ern the Hunter, or any of these places that we went to actually try and get inspiration from Wayland Smith or any of that kind of stuff. It was already there. So I just found that I could just talk about it in a way that I think people found accessible. And I make absolutely no apologies for saying that the accessibility of it is very important to me, because I think we can disappear up your own psyche if you're trying to make it too complicated. And I wanted to make it simple so people go, oh, that's why that is like that. Okay, now we understand that. And so I think my simplistic Yorkshire way of approaching it made it accessible. And it was certainly later on when we looked in at Greenwood Tarot about, and although that has got probably some stranger esoteric aspects to it, again, when I was working with Cheska, I wanted to make it accessible so that people could look at it and go, oh, I can relate to that. Now, some of the artwork in Cheska's, some of the aspects in Cheska's artwork is a little bit harder for people to access, but certainly when we got to Wildwood, that artwork speaks to you, and it speaks to me, and it speaks to a wider range of people, and I make absolutely no apologies for doing that.
Well, nor should you, because it is applicable to real life. There's it's from an ancient time, but there's families, it's real. It's what we really live.
The concept of home, the hearth fire, all of that kind of stuff, which if you were living through that period, you know, water, shelter, fire, and food, they are the four most important things in survival in any environment, but particularly in a winter, northern, hemisphere, European, water, shelter, fire, and food. That's it. So I wanted to make sure that we do some of that. I wrote a chapter of that for the new project for Sherwood Oracle, because I wanted to again nail that down and go, look, this, if you're in the forest and I just watched something the other night. It was actually brilliant. It was a bloke that went into the Canadian forest with nothing more than 5 tools. He had an axe, a saw, a knife, and something else. And it was 30 degrees below freezing. And the guy filmed himself going into this forest in northern Canada in the snow and making himself and surviving the night with just the most minimal of things. And if you were traveling in 1,000 years ago, that's basically the skills that he had and the knowledge that he had of the ground and how he could keep warm and find something to eat. He got something to drink. How he did that was absolutely brilliant. I found it fascinating. So I wanted to relate those skills and basic needs in both Wildwood and I've said we've done it in Sherwood Oracle. I've written a little, just a water, shelter, and fire and food.
Well, because it all has to work together, right? The practical, the physical, the spiritual, and the mental. And that's what that does. If it's all just spiritual, you're not going to get that grounding that you need from time to time to go
Absolutely.
back to.
And again, I steal from the best. I stole from John Wiseman, Lofty John Wiseman. If anybody's watching this, Lofty John Wiseman is still alive, as far as I'm aware. He one of the most famous members of the Special Air Service, the SAS, and he was the survival trainer and teacher. And I actually listened to his lecture a couple of times. And Lofty wrote a book called the SAS Survival Guide, which is absolutely brilliant. It's one of those books you could literally have it by the side of the bed, open up any time, and there will be something that you go, God, I didn't know that. And I actually keep a copy by the bed because I will literally just flick it open, and there's a page on birds or wildlife or fishing or weather or whatever. There's always something. Absolutely brilliant. So I highly recommend Lofty Wiseman's The SAS Survival Guide. Brilliant.
It's Lofty Wiseman.
Lofty. His nickname was Lofty because he was about 6'7". So he was John Wiseman, but he was known as Lofty. John Lofty. There you go, Lofty Wiseman. And the SAS Survival book, it's fantastic. It really is. And so in there, of course, that's where he nails down, when you're military, as I was, they're the things you have to deal with: water, shelter, fire, and food. And those are the essentials that you need to master in any environment.
And this is the book you need to have if there's a zombie apocalypse.
The zombie apocalypse. I think there is actually a chapter now in the new book about the zombie apocalypse. You know what I mean? Whether cricket bat, crowbar, pump action shotgun. What's the best for the zombie apocalypse? I don't know.
Okay, Mark, I have permission to go over because we started late. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, rock and roll. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, there was a joke made earlier when you said that you weren't going to buy your family Ferrari on your tarot. It's like on your tarot earnings, but it's not no Ferrari, but maybe a yellow Camaro.
A yellow Camaro. I have been trying to get them to give me a yellow Camaro. But a canary do actually, from if anybody's listening. A yellow Camaro. I've been trying because I've been promoting it, and I kept dropping hints like, "Well, do you want to see me driving around Los Angeles in a Bumblebee Camaro?" They've never bitten. They've never gone for it. So
What happened to perks? I mean, what happened?
Well, it's the same as if Hasbro's watching. It's the same as the toys. I've been promised every toy, like Jetfire and Lockdown, and always never seen them. Never arrived. Oh, we'll send you one. No problem. We'll send you a Jetfire. We'll send you a Lockdown, bro. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Okay, so we all have to write to the Transformer franchise. Give us the link and say, give Mark his toys, okay?
Yeah.
Because
I want my toy.
He wants his toys.
Not a lot, is it? Not a lot to ask,
Tamara says hello.
Oh.
And
hello, Tamara.
And Brian says, how would you compare working on Robin Hood with Black Sails in that time difference?
Wow, Brian, who is it? Which Brian is it?
Brian Greiner. He's a regular viewer and
okay. Hello, Brian. How you doing? If you're hearing me, well, Robin was classic British television in the sense that the actors were allowed to bring things to their performances and to the shows. As I just told the story about Richard Carpenter coming and talking about stuff, we had a bit of an input into what we wore and how we wore it, like the swords on my back and the knives at the front. The costume department and everything were very cool about all that kind of stuff, and we were allowed to do that to help form the characters. There's not the showrunners now in productions are basically the gods, and they're running it, and you're not really allowed to change any dialogue or even bring too much to it yourself. They want you to learn the lines, say the lines, be the character that they wrote, and do. And I guess it's just a way of doing it. Now, Black Sails, I enjoyed being a pirate, so I'm not knocking the way that they did it, and certainly some of the dialogue that I had was some of the best dialogue ever written. Well, not in just in Black Sails in the show, but also probably in any show that I've ever seen on television. I mean, some of the dialogue I had.
It's on my top 3 of written television series.
Fantastic dialogue, and because I'm working with Toby Stevens, but also the whole cast, I have to say, were very dedicated and great. Toby Schmitz, everybody was. Zach, they're really dedicated professionals, and they brought everything they could to it. It's a once in a lifetime thing. You're going to be invited to be a pirate. What are you going to do? You're going to go full out for it, right? So everybody was on it and there for it, and really gave it the rock all, and gave it gave it everything they could. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do a lot of scenes with actors that were really in that space, but obviously with Toby, who really is, well, he's theatrical royalty. I mean, you know, he is. His mother is Maggie Smith, and he's in his blood, and his father, Sir, you know, was a Sir, and a very, very well famous theatrical actor in his own right. So it was in his blood. It was in it, Toby's. It's in Toby's blood. And it was great to be able to work with him, because we would go away, particularly some of the longer scenes, and we'd sit in his kitchen in his place in South Africa, in Cape Town, where we were, and just run the dialogue, run it. So it just became, you know, like real dialogue, you know, like you're just talking like old mates, because we'd never met each other before, obviously. And so we just got to know each other and got to go with each other's pacing and how we were going to try and do things. So we were very lucky with that. So it is different. It was different. They wouldn't let me into any of the action sequences, bizarrely. And even the sword guys down there were like going, but you do know who he is. Right? He's kind of a sword guy. They wouldn't let me do it. They were like, no, we don't want you going into sword fights. We don't want any of that. Which I used to try and sneak in and work with the stunt guys and do the fights, and got pulled off the set by one of the producers. What are you doing, you lunatic? You're not, you know, 40, 39 anymore. We don't want you keeling over. You know, I said, it's highly unlikely. And even the stunt guys were like going, he does know what he's doing. And they were like, you know, the insurance people just really don't want him being involved in any of this. So that's the way it was.
So it's like many other things in life. The casualness of it, the free for, not the free for all. No, really, when I think of Robin of Sherwood, I just see you guys having a really good time going for it. But it's all more professional. Like, not that you weren't professional in that one. I don't want to say professional. Mark, give me the word that I'm saying.
Well, I think we had more largesse. One of the directors once described it as the huddle. And what would happen was we arrived on the set if we had a dialogue scene, and before they actually got there, we would run it. We'd just run the scene between again, and we were all such different characters that every flavor came out during that huddle. And so one of the directors came over. He said, "I don't really need to direct you guys. We just need to put you over, let you run the dialogue, and then we just shoot it." And because you know each other so well, we were so tight that and obviously we knew each other. We'd been living together literally at one point in the proceedings, so we were able to knock these scenes out pretty quickly. And obviously I didn't have any dialogue. I just had to sort of hang around in the background waiting to do something and stab somebody, or, you know, throw something, you know, knife or something. So but it was a joy to be in the middle of all of that creative energy. It was you know, fantastic. So, and the directors would go, just let them go away and do it. They'll show you the scene, and then they just shot it. So there was some direction. I mean, I'm not knocking some of the directors. Obviously, Ian Sharp was the first director that we had for the first 6 episodes that really set the tone for the piece. And Ian, wonderful director who I worked with on Who Dares Wins, which was I was shooting when I was the last part of my run on Evita. I was actually shooting Who Dares Wins during the day and doing Che Guevara at night. So literally I was shooting for almost 8 weeks on Who Dares Wins while performing Che at night. So Ian very kindly gave me permission to do that, and so did Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber. So yeah, that was working with Ian. From that's where I got offered Robin and Sherwood through Ian that directed the first 6 episodes.
So Brian said, thank you very much for the answer. And Tamara said she agrees with me on Black Sails being the top 3 written series on television. And I just have to take note when people agree with me. Like, it's just, it's nature.
It was a pretty serious writing team, let me tell you. There was a serious writer's room that worked on those scenes. And, of course, it shows. I think there was actually about 8 writers or more probably at one point in proceedings. But their dialogue and the way that they approached it, because it was a complex, interwoven story.
Something happened in the first season. I'm not going to say what it is. Mark is very aware of what it is. That made me say, that's it. I'm not watching any more of this show. I'm not watching any more of it. That's it. I'm upset. I'm not doing it. And then my husband had it on in the second season. And so I got roped in, and they actually made me like the person who did the thing that I didn't like in the first series. Yeah. And if they can do that, they can do anything. Okay. They twisted and turned, and it was fantastic.
There were discussions about that and about what they would do about that, and was there a possibility of doing something else with that? And I did have conversations with people about that and about that, and I did think it was a mistake. I thought they made a mistake, and so did various other people as well. And it was said that's not smart, and but it is what it is, and it's show business. And you go in, you do the job, you go, thank you very much, and you go on to the next thing, which I did. So it's all part of life's rich tapestry.
No, it is, but it made me very. I mean, not just because of you. I like you, but Hal Gates just is he was Mr. Gates. He had. I'm sure there was much of you in him, but or he was you organizing everything and whatnot. But he was just.
Well, he was the audience's point of view in the midst of this world. A lot of people said that, talked about that. It's been said since that he was really the one person in the situation that you could relate to, in the sense that his view was juggling all of these conflicting and aggressive and violent but complex issues, and keeping them all, keeping it all going. And not only that, he was incredibly loyal, not just to his crew, but also to the characters in the show. So there was a serious discussion about whether that would in fact damage the chemistry of that, because he was definitely somebody that the audience looked through the eyes of this world and could relate to. So trust me, it was the subject of some discussion. That's all I will say.
It was the subject of some discussion in this house, I'll tell you. What are you doing watching that show? Do you know what they did?
The production values were off the scale. Again, Michael Bay. Production values were just off the scale,
So we're talking about the reason why Mark, if you don't know, needed to get out there and play with those swords is because he is a fight director and a sword master, and worked on the 2004 Arthur and the First Knight.
Yep.
And you're okay. So now they're telling you that you can't play with the swords because you're getting older. But I directly remember, and I'm looking at a quote here from Stellan Skarsgård saying, who was probably that old. Wouldn't he have been that old when he made Arthur?
Well, there's an interesting story about that, because Stellan again is a first-class human being. Not only is he a great actor, but he's also a great team member and wants to be a part of the whole thing. And there was one point where he has to do this massive sword fight at the end, and he came to me afterwards when he was supposed to start training for this, and he said, "Look, Mark," he said, "I've never done an action scene. Never, not a sword fight, not a gunfight. He said, I've been in lots of films going on around me, but I've never done it. And a sword fight, he said, I don't even know where to begin. I said, what advice have you got? And if you're going to steal from the best. So I stole from Bob Silverblade Anderson, the man who I did First Night with, but also who choreographed The Princess Bride and Highlander and Zorro and a whole bunch of cinematic genius sword fights. And so I said to him, I said, look, a sword fight is a dialogue scene where the blades have the dialogue. You're actually doing a drama scene. It's a drama scene where the dialogue is being expressed through the swords. So there's all the way through the scene. There's the same as you would have in an acting scene. There's little high points and low points and movements and pauses and fast bits and slow bits. And the whole thing is an acting job. It's all about the emotions that are running through these two people closely in combat with each other. And so I'm going to choreograph it like that. So there'll be highs and lows and emotional moments and stops and starts. And, it's a drama scene. And he said, okay. He said, okay, let's go. Let's do it. And we did. And that's where that quote that I think that you're probably looking at came from, because that scene, when we actually shot it for real, which he has with Mads Mikkelsen, and then there's a fight afterwards with King Arthur. But the one with Mads, where he kills Tristan, when we shot it, there was a lady, the continuity lady, in the tent in Video Village, where all the videos are, and I'd shot it in a particular way. We didn't tell anybody what was going to happen, but the scene where actually Stellan kills Mads Mikkelsen as Tristan was so moving, where then the bird, that his pet hawk, flies up into the sky. I went back in to look at some of the close-ups, and I walked in, and the continuity lady was in tears, literally looking at the screen, and literally said to me, you she said, that is the most horrible, moving thing, because everybody loved that character again. And it's one of those things that you go, I didn't want to do it, but the director's the director, and he knew the impact, the emotional impact that would have. So my job was to make it as impactful as possible. And that's what we did. And literally people were like, you just killed the most loved character in the film. What do I said, so yeah, and Stellan was brilliant, absolutely brilliant in it. So
he said, it says that he said, you're a brilliant teacher. You are making this lazy middle-aged man dance with a sword. And I think that's a great quote.
And I actually think I said to him, because he said to me, how are you going to do this? And I said, you can move. I know you can move. I've watched you physically move. I said, so you can move. There's an old Celtic saying, never give a sword to a man who can't dance. And both Mads Mikkelsen, who was trained as a ballet dancer, and Stellan could move, and physically to be able to coordinate and move. And I said, so we're halfway there. We're going to dance. And we add the drama to the dance. This will be a scene which people.
It was a very emotional scene, and you did it well. I mean, it's difficult for us who are watching or reading something to have our favorites killed off always, but it's the nature of the game to make us feel. So it's sort of, not to be a pun, but a double-edged sword there. To do it well, you have to make them feel.
Yeah, and there has to be a moment where the motivation for the confrontation at the end, both with Lancelot and with Tristan, has to be so powerful that there's an emotional, visceral reaction to it, and there was. And so, I kind of got told off by various production people that the version that I prefer is Antoine Fuqua's version, the actual director's cut, which is much more bloody and visceral than the version they put out. Because I think Disney thought it was a little bit, the words that were mentioned to me was gratuitously violent. And I said, look, I was told we were making Gladiator, so I'm choreographing filmically in my head Gladiator. So that's where I have been, and they was going, well, it's very violent. I mean, it's gratuitous. And I said, well, you can always cut it down. I said, but you can't add it in. So, if we film it and it looks like that, and there were various scenes where I wanted to empower our leading lady, Kira. I wanted to make sure Kira was in the fights, and there was some resistance to that as well. I had to fight to get her in the fights. She wanted to be in the fights, and I had
historically, that would be correct.
Absolutely. And that was actually one of the arguments that I used, was about the Celtic warrior queens leading the tribes, the Iceni tribe, against the Romans. That's how they ended up being massacred. That the bloodlines were handed down through the women, not through the men. And so the queens are led like nowadays they call her Boudica, or I grew up calling her Boadicea, because that's how but it's probably the wrong school. It was Boadicea, so or Boudica, whatever.
It's your history, so you should probably be right.
Yeah, but it's also Latin, and we don't speak much Latin in Yorkshire.
It's difficult because if you read a word, you sort of pronounce it the way you read it, right? And then you go out into the world, but you heard it that way. Maybe the Boudica people just read it.
I think at school it was Boadicea. That's what we heard. But like I say, we didn't speak much Latin in Doncaster. In fact, we don't speak as much English in Doncaster. So Anyway, shout out to Donny there. My hometown.
But the point is, it was historically accurate to have her fight.
Yes, absolutely.
And so good for you, Mark, standing up for the girl warriors out there and getting them in there.
Well, I've always tried to, and I've had some stick from various elements, but it was also the same with Greenwood. We wanted to emphasize. That's why I put in. It was my idea to put a female archer both in Greenwood and in Wildwood. I said no, it has to be a woman, because it's about balance. And the old card, the charioteer, was a bloke driving a chariot and pushing the horses and all that. Let's just do something different. Let's empower the girls in this. Let's give the women some, power in this. And archery, if you ever seen a female archer, a real woman archer, it's so beautiful, it's so graceful. And so, and it's a projection of power through archery. So I changed the charioteer card to the archer, and that's why we have female archers in both decks, actually, Greenwood and Wildwood.
So okay.
So I'm all for that. I'm all for empowering.
Yeah, and getting them into those warrior roles. And I think I can't imagine it without her being, because that was her nature in the movie, to get out there and do something and defend her people, and it would have been odd if
the true story is that there was certain people that were concerned because Kira is so slight. I mean, she won't be offended by this. I mean, she is a very petite. She's very flexible. She's very fit. She's very, but she's not a female wrestler. And I said, well, let's use that to our advantage. So I went to her and said, okay, so I want to get you in the fights, which she wanted to do. And I said, they're worried about this, look about not being a muscular sort of, I said, so we're going to use that. We're going to make you wiry and fast and moving quickly and stabbing people in jugular veins and, thighs and all over. And so we're going to make it fast, that you're feral, you're moving like an animal, really fast and nasty. And stabbing these big guys, where, bringing them down, with the power of the precision of what you're doing. And, she was all for it, and she came to the stunt training camp that we had, and she threw herself around like a lunatic. It was fantastic. I can't tell you how impressed I was with Kira, the work that she put in. And some of the scenes, though, that we did are not in the version that was actually released. It was then Antoine, because he came to me and said, how are you going to make this work? And I showed him one of the fights that we'd done, and he went, that's going in my version. It's where the scene where all the girls are climbing on that big Saxon guy and they're all stabbing him. Eventually they bring down this massive guy, literally a huge Irish actor that plays one of the Saxons. And I had him like almost being attacked by a pack of wild animals, and they literally managed to stab him and pull him down. And he kept it in the film, and it got cut out of the version that was put on general release. And everybody kind of went, you know, I don't know why, maybe it's just time or something like that. But I wanted to show that element in the film.
So, yeah, I mean, it has to be disappointing when you put that much work and planning into something and it just disappears. Right.
Yeah. And you film it and it's there and they've got it and they don't put it in, you know. And that's
the biz, as they say.
That's the biz.
That's the biz.
It ends on the cutting room floor, you know.
So you mentioned there was new intrigue. There's lots and lots of intrigue in your life. Because of some of the stuff you get into. Do you want to allude to any of that, Mark, or are you just going to leave that up in the air?
Well, no, I don't mind talking about it. A lot of it is already out there in the public domain. But I mean, I'm obviously we're writing. We've written and now finished Sherwood Oracle. So, and I was looking at what project I might approach next. There's a couple of projects, and we're looking at doing a podcast related to esoteric patents, because there's a lot of things in the patent world which people, and it all grew out of the whole UAP UFO, and I don't mind talking about this now, thing, which there's a lot of stuff out there at the moment about this, which is disinformation, and some of it is understandable, but from the intelligence point of view, and I say this because it's in the book, I was a member of the British Army's Intelligence Corps, and I was attached to and worked with a lot of interesting people, including UK Special Forces, but also organizations. Some of them don't even exist anymore now, but some of them are pretty esoteric in the way that they approach what we call HumInt, human intelligence. And so I worked in that arena for almost a decade. And then when I went to California, moved to California, it kind of followed me. I had a very high security clearance. I know that sounds weird to people out there. They go, who's an actor? Why did he have a security clearance? I had a very high security clearance, and I was told then by my bosses, this is going to follow you for the rest of your life. We're going to be listening to you for the rest of your life. So don't get into any trouble. Don't do anything stupid. So over 20 years, I didn't talk about it, except I worked as a private investigator. As it was my want, and did lots of odd things in that world in California and throughout America, actually. And so one of the things that just got thrown up was about the whole UFO, UAP thing. And I happen to have, because of what my involvement, certain knowledge about some of this. And I don't know, it's not a criticism of people, because I actually like and respect people like Nick Pope, and I understand where Lou is coming from and Chris Mellon are coming from, because they can't actually tell the truth, right? I know somebody personally who I worked with that crossed the line by talking about something that they shouldn't have talked about because it was a classified thing. And that person was dragged in front of a tribunal. He was threatened with losing his pension. He lost his rank. He was thrown out the area that he worked in. It's a very serious thing if you say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And people don't understand the classification system. So people talk about, well, why don't they just say it? Well, they can't just say it. They can't. They're not allowed to, but they'd also end up going to jail. But they'd lose their future livelihoods, because they'd probably lose their clearances and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot you have to read between the lines, but there's definitely a lot of disinformation coming out, which has probably got to do with what's gone on in the last 60 years about UFOs. We are flying highly advanced aircraft. And I'm going to give you an example. The SR-71.
Mark, don't say anything that's going to get you in trouble.
No,
okay?
no, because I'm going to say something which is the SR-71 okay. Blackbird spy plane, which obviously I know something about. Behold the glory of Jetfire, which is Ray Winston. Actually, I'm doing Ray Winston as Jetfire. I got pulled up by Michael Bay about that. He said, "Who are you doing there? Who is Jetfire?" So it's my mate Ray Winston. Behold, okay, the glory of Jetfire. I said the SR-71 was designed in the 50s, right? They were flying it in the late 50s and early 60s. And they kept it a secret for 25, 30 years because it was so advanced you know. So we are flying things that are 30 years in front right now, and these often get mistaken for UFOs. And there was one discussion about, and there's a lot of people out there asking questions because they don't understand how it works. I can say this now because it's in the public domain. One of the things that has been often mistaken for UFO is the Ascender, which is a dirigible. It's a balloon sort of craft. It's like a modern day dirigible. It's V-shaped. It's massive, absolutely huge, and it's used for high altitude research. But it's V-shaped. It looks like a triangle. If you saw it with the lattice work at the back, it looks like a giant triangle. It's massive. There are photographs of it online. It moves slowly. It's silent. And if it was painted black, for instance, you would look at that in the night sky and go, what is that? It's floating above a city or whatever. It's got 3 lights on it. It looks like a triangle because you can't see the stuff in the middle. So a lot of things are mistaken. And that's in the public domain for it. Now, this 5 observables, which is things moving quickly, it wouldn't have that because it's actually a high altitude platform. However, it can be used for other things which are classified. So they can't say, well, that could be an Ascender and it's being used for this. Although I did see something on the History Channel, I think it was last night, that actually where they actually discussed that role. I can't confirm that role because I worked in that area. So I am not allowed to say that's correct. I can say that's interesting idea, that's an interesting observation, that's probably true, possibly true, whatever. But I can't say I know that for a fact. I would end up in jail. So there's a lot of things out there which are being misidentified and being stepped around because it would solve a lot of things. It would solve a lot of problems. I mean, if you see a big black triangle floating through the sky, which is bigger than a football field, you might go, "What? How is that staying in the air?" Well, it's staying in the air because it's a dirigible.
So right? Would there ever be a time somewhere in the future where you would be like where there would be a book? Mark Ryan reveals the truth.
Yes, I'm actually working on it. Let me clear this up for people that are watching right now. So I can give you I believe, right, that there is abundant life in the universe. I don't believe we are the only intelligent entities in the universe. In fact, I can't actually understand why people would actually believe that, but if they do, they do. My belief is that the universe, and even probably just our galaxy, it's called the Drake equation. There is other intelligent life out there, I believe. Has it been here? Has it visited us? I don't know for a fact. However, I would think, given all what we're learning about the universe, we are learning at a quicker pace, it's possible. It's possible that there have been other intelligent species here to visit Earth, just to look at us, just to go, what are these guys doing? And because we're learning more now about the universe on a daily basis, we hadn't really got a coherent concept of what gravity is until recently. We now understand more because we've now seen gravitational waves through the LIGO observation, I think it's the LIGO system, that just went, okay, there are things called gravitational waves. We're now beginning to understand much more about dark matter and about antimatter and about gravity at quite a fast pace. So I believe it's very possible that some other advanced civilization found a way to travel the galaxy and has been here to visit. That's just my personal belief. I'm not saying that as a fact. I don't know that as a fact. I believe it. I think that it's possibly true that we have been visited. Is there some agreement between the governments and these races? It's possible. It's because some of the stuff that he's talked about, you go, well, that really, and I'll put this into the discussion as well. Anybody wants to ask me about it, I'm happy to talk about it at the next public event I'm at. The Manhattan Project, for instance, if you said to somebody in 1939, 1940, if you went to some bloke on the street in Chicago and said, there's a tiny piece of matter called an atom, and when we split that, it's going to release so much energy, it will vaporize a city. Now, if you tried to explain that to a guy in the street in 1940, they would have gone, "Are you out of your tiny mind? What do you? I can't even see this thing. It's so small, but the energy is so huge. That's what happens. It causes a reaction, and that's what happens." So the mistake that America made was that the Manhattan Project was actually riddled with people that were working for people that now, as we know, Russia got the secret, China got the secret, and that's just the nature of the spying business. Sadly, they lost that advantage because they couldn't protect the secret. Now, whatever secret there is regarding UAPs, obviously is strategically important. If America actually did find a way to build these advanced craft, and I would say they did, and there's reasons why I say they did, and would certainly have certain knowledge of that, then they're not going to let that secret out. They're going to hold on to that secret for as long as they possibly can. It's a strategic advantage that we hold on to that knowledge and keep it, because you can see what's happening in the world at the moment. There are bubbling up of trouble in various places. And if the Department of Defense and its contractors have an advantage, they will want to, what we call, build a bodyguard of lies based on Winston Churchill's. Please read the book. You want another book to read? Read A Bodyguard of Lies. It's absolutely required reading for anybody in the intelligence community. Read it. Anthony Cave Brown, Bodyguard of Lies. And it comes from a Winston Churchill quote, which is, "In war, the truth is so precious, she must always be accompanied by a bodyguard of lies."
So that
if it's good enough for Churchill, it's good enough for me.
Oh, that should be on a bumper sticker.
Bodyguard of lies.
That,
in war,
and
the truth is so precious.
And Mark Ryan believes in possibilities in his life.
Absolutely.
And in the paranormal.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think. There was another book that you suggested on Facebook, and I didn't write it down or anything, and I scrolled past about something about government, ulterior government. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back.
Was it on my Twitter or Facebook or something?
It was on your Facebook. It was a couple years back. It was about like a secret government or agenda. A secret government agenda or something. Not that he has a very happy Facebook, and it's
maybe it was Bodyguard of Lies. I promote Bodyguard of Lies.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because when anybody comes to me and go, "What does this mean?" I go, the intelligence community's job is not just to protect democracy, it's to protect the things that protect democracy. So they wrap all of these things. D-Day would not have been successful. And Bodyguard of Lies is about that. It's about major deception operations. So that I detect in this whole UAP revolutionary thing a certain amount of deception which is required. I understand why they're doing it. I've sort of been backwards and forwards with Brandon Fugel. If you've watched a show called Skinwalker Ranch, to open a whole other can of worms, there's certain elements within that show where we kind of bounce backwards and forwards. We haven't actually talked properly yet, Brandon, but I've been trying to say to you, what is this? How does this work? And I'm going, I know this works because I was there when it was actually implemented. So I have an idea for you that you're going to go, "Oh, I never thought about that," about why they are getting the certain responses that they're getting and being surveilled. And I've said to me, you have to understand you are under surveillance. You're under surveillance. Your team is being looked at, followed, bugged, you name it. It's all going on Skinwalker Ranch. I tried to say that, and they're mystified by some of these things, and I'm trying to go, well, I can explain that to you because I've been there when some of these things have actually been used. I've witnessed this as part of my role in the intelligence community, but also in jobs I've done since being a licensed private investigator. So I tried to say that, and it's a very interesting show. However, I do think they are trying to approach it in the most scientific. Travis Taylor's trying to approach it in the most scientific way that he can. So I have a lot of sympathy for him. But again, Travis can't say what he really knows. He's a contractor for NASA. He can't say it. It would destroy him. And so he has to kind of tap dance around things. And I've seen a couple of interviews where he said things which I went, why would you say that? He went, you know, an iPhone can't be hacked. Yes, it can. There is no phone made on the planet that can't be hacked. Trust me. They can open anything. If you think your WhatsApp is, it's not. They will find a way, trust me. So he said a couple of things. I went, you must know that's not true. You must know that any of your cell, because on the show, they've got cell phones doing all kinds of things and electronic equipment going sideways. Anything's possible. Let me tell you, you don't need aliens and you don't need entities, Earth entities, to do that.
And this is why when I start to fear that the world is stabilizing, I immediately go to Mark's Facebook page.
And I destabilize. I destabilize the whole thing.
And I'm like, if he gets scared, if he says run for your lives, I will. So Mark, if the world is at that point, you had better put on your Facebook page.
Well,
Vicky,
but
go.
to answer the question that you asked about 20 minutes ago, yes, I am working on a book about this whole subject, because I was just going to put it in as a chapter in Old Fast, and then I went, no, it's such a big and important chapter. Look, the Vatican has accepted that they are the possibility of alien life other than being on Earth, right? They've accepted that. And not only that, they've said, of course, because the Catholics, they want to be in there first. If there are alien brothers out there.
Now you're going to get letters.
Now I'm going to get letters. No, you know, hey. My dad was a Catholic. I grew up Catholic. So I didn't grow up Catholic. We didn't actually go to a Catholic church. If the Vatican, which probably knows more than it's actually letting on, is saying, if there are brothers out there that are out in the universe, they're all God's creation, we welcome them. You know what I mean? They're not saying, no, we are the pinnacle of God's creation. They're going, well, if God created something else, it's okay. We're all brothers in whatever spirit, blah, blah, blah. So I have a feeling that the Vatican knows a bit more about this than they're letting on to. So now I'm going to get hate mail from, like you say.
So that's another book we can look forward to. And
yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to write that, because I think at the moment there appears to be some of it is benign, without doubt. Some of it is benign, what people are revealing while trying to protect themselves, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. I'm not having a go at Luis Elizondo.
A very difficult situation.
Yes, and they're trying to drop breadcrumbs, which they're hoping the rest of us will put together. And some of it I know to tap dance around things, because I have to do it myself sometimes. And even in Hold Fast, there are things I had to be very careful about what I said about certain things. And so some things I just went, well, you know, history, it happened, it's in the public domain. But they don't understand the rules, and so because people don't understand the rules, they expect everybody's just going to go, here's what I know, and they can't do that. And so you've got people out there, like I say, Chris Mellon is a smart guy, right? I mean, this guy was up there at the top. He's having to tap dance around things, and I don't mean that to sound belittling to him, but I understand how it works. And nobody wants to end up having your pension pulled and, you know, your mortgage stopped, and suddenly a visitation from the IRS wanting to inspect your books over the last 7 years, all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of stuff which is genuinely, I don't know, wacky. Some of the stuff that's coming out, and it's almost like a religion. It's almost like paganism in a way. It's almost, pagans constantly. It's almost like that. It's turned into some kind of a spiritual endeavor about the people that believe they're aliens and the people that believe it's something else. So
when will it be okay for you to talk? Like, when are you able to do this without? When do you think it might be advisable for you to put out such a?
Well, if anybody's watching, these are the rules that I apply to this, and I've tried to explain this to people both on Twitter, the people that I've been, Nick Pope, who worked for the Ministry of Defence as well. I was aware of Nick Pope, what he was doing before probably Nick Pope was aware of me. So that's how far this goes back. The rules are simple but complex, and that is anything you learn while you have signed. And I signed not only the Official Secrets Act several times, probably 4 times, if it's exact, and also what's called the Special Forces contract. And what people don't understand is that in itself is classified, right? That is classified. So you're not supposed to, give any details about what that contract is in that contract. So I signed both. Now, if it's in the public domain and I had no interaction with it and I don't actually know, I never worked in that arena, I'm perfectly entitled to speculate and say, like the Ascender, like I just said about the Ascender, the V-shaped dirigible balloon, high altitude surveillance thing. I can talk about that. I never worked on it personally. I just know what it is and what it could be used for. So I'm not giving any secrets away because it's out there in the public domain. The company that builds it has got a website. You can go visit them. You can see the pictures of this massive thing, right? And say, oh, crikey. It looks like something that if it flew across your sky, you'd go, what the hell is that? And it's silent. And a lot of the descriptions of it are the slow, majestic thing gliding through the sky, but no noise. Okay, a slight hum, somebody said. That's because probably they're using some kind of electric motors for propulsion. And I can talk about that. If I was there and did something which I was a witness to, involved with, right, I can't talk about that because it's still classified, right? Unless, for instance, there's a photograph on the internet that I can go, oh, and somebody says to me, do you know what that is? I can go, yes, I know what that is. It's called an LRIC, and it's in the public domain because there is a picture of the Special Boat Service, the SBS, that who I worked with, that is, which is the same as your Navy SEALs. I worked with the British SBS, and that is a picture of an LRIC, and I worked with them when that was on HMS Fearless. When I worked with them, that was one of the things that I saw. It's in the public domain, so I can comment on that. I can't give any details of what they do and what their dimensions are and what they, what their role, what their role is, but give any classified information about their capabilities. Let's put it that way. Which I wouldn't do anyway.
So there's a very fine line that you have to walk.
You have to walk a fine line, and I'm very obviously. I not only did I swear allegiance to the flag, both the British flag and the American flag, so I have worked in both these arenas, and I wouldn't do it out of that loyalty as a patriot, basically, to the democratic system. I wouldn't want to give away secrets for that reason. And I believe that Llewellyn Ondro and all these other guys that involved, Nick Pope, they're all in the same boat. They don't want to jeopardize what they served by giving away something that would jeopardize our security. They're not going to do that. So you have to find a way to say it or drop crumbs, which people can follow and then make up their own minds and work it out from there. But it's got so intense that people are having to go at each other all the time. It's like, guys, calm down, all right?
Well, it's just the state of the world. I mean, somebody puts up a KFC commercial and there's like 1,000 people arguing something on it. You know what I mean? Everything has to be argued. And I am not saying KFC just popped into my head. Okay, I'm not saying it's good or bad or anything. So I don't want that argument. But I'm just saying.
It's one of the bad things about the internet and certainly Twitter at the moment is that it's invited every lunatic on the planet, if they want to just say stuff to you anonymously and be insulting and rude and aggressive, they do. I get it myself all the time. I get literally people writing the most horrendous, salacious stuff, and I just mute them. And I put up rules about 2 months ago. I put up new rules. If you start with an insult and you're rude to me, I will mute you.
You don't have to.
Yeah, and then I just block them. And so there's a lot of trolls online, obviously, because of the situation in Ukraine at the moment. There's an absolute tidal wave of trolls. So, and if you're on one side or the other of this divide, you're going to get attacked for liking stuff or supporting stuff. But it has invited folks that I don't know how to put it. They express themselves in a not an unkind way. They think that you should think like them, and you're an idiot if you don't. And I have no time for it.
No, freedom of thought is important. Okay, Mark, I'm gonna just clear up a couple questions here, and
Sure.
and then you can go. Okay, Tamara. Tamara wants to know if you have any idea why the Catholic Church would choose now to admit there are aliens. Like, is it a timing thing?
Well, they actually did it a few years ago. I mean, they actually put out a press release, probably, I don't know, it's certainly more than 3 years ago, it's probably 5 years ago. But certainly over the last 10 years, they put out a press release and a whole doctrine about it. It resurfaced just recently because it came up in a discussion again I was having with somebody online. I said, look, even the Vatican has gone, yeah, it's possible. There are other intelligent life in the universe. So it may well be that the Vatican were in front of all of this, and so they've gone, let's drag this out again and rehash this. And so whether it's now, whether it's just circumstances, because there's so much heat on the subject, but interesting discussion. I mean, we're now talking about intra-dimensional entities. I wrote a comic book called The Pilgrim, which has come up in various discussions about this, about intra-dimensional entities. There you go. A lot of it's in there, and the reason I got away with that, since you've asked me the question, is it's a comic book. So there's a lot of stuff in there, which is a graphic novel, which has got stuff in it.
Find a way.
So it's a comic book, so it's fiction, right? There's a lot of stuff in there.
The Pilgrim holds secrets.
The Pilgrim holds secrets. One of the reason that it was taken down in the first place was there's a rumor online that it was taken down because I gave away too many secrets in the comic book. And the reason that the company that was doing it originally dropped it was because, and had financial problems, was because of that I gave away too much stuff, even in the fictionalized version, which, for those of you that may be fans of the intelligence community type genre, there was an entire film about people that wrote fictional books which turned out to be true. And it's based on a chap called Charles McCarry. He was an actual CIA officer that wrote multiple novels, one of them being The Tears of Autumn. If you want to read one of the books that I absorbed as a kid, a book called The Tears of Autumn by Charles McCarry about the assassination of John F.K., where he manages to, in this book, steer everybody completely in a different direction. So it is real. There were people writing books that were intelligence-backed and knowledgeable, and were written as sort of an attempt at general disinformation. And then there was a film made about people that wrote that and then got assassinated because they wrote something which was too close to the truth. So it's bodyguard of lies, webs within labyrinths within labyrinths.
So, and Brian, I don't understand that, but I'm not about. Brian asked, does this mean that the movie Buckaroo Banzai was trying to expose the truth?
It's all true.
Brian, you're right.
Buckaroo Banzai is, yeah, it's all true. It's that, I only sat through the film once. I didn't understand it then. I think you probably, and I normally you had to be drunk or something I don't know.
So you're just gonna say it's all true,
just all true. I just said no, it's all true. Buckaroo Banzai, that there's various other films like that. You go, yeah, no, that's. Yeah.
Brian says he knew it.
Yeah.
Brian, are you being in trouble? And one last one I have to ask, because my husband is also a history buff, and he has asked, we know that you love history. Is there one story particular that has really perked your interest lately? Like a
Lately,
discovery? Yeah.
gosh, I suppose the whole thing about UAP UFO thing, because if you look at the history of it going back to the Second World War, for those that are into this kind of thing, I'll say this because again, it's true. Many years ago, I was asked about a stuff called red mercury, which those that have been following this was supposed to have been one of the elements that was used in the Nazi attempt to build an anti-gravity propulsion device, and it was called the Glocker. And this device, which was apparently more secret than the Nazi attempt to build a nuclear weapon, was so secret that even to this day, it's talked about in hush whispers, and everybody thinks it was fake and whatever, which is the standard way of hiding this. But Operation Paperclip brought a lot of people to America and to Britain, and some of them went to Russia as well. In fact, von Braun himself was a decorator, was an absolute member of the Nazi Party, and he ended up putting men on the moon for NASA. So a lot of German scientists were brought over during Paperclip and worked with it. So this story about the Nazis attempting to build an anti-gravity machine, part of the elements, one of them was a thing called red mercury. And I remember bringing this up in a conversation probably late 80s with somebody, and they said, never bring that up again. Never ever discuss that again, or even ask questions about it. It's a need to know thing, and you don't need to know. Never bring it up again. Well, I was only looking the other day at something to do with superconductors, and there's a new stuff called red matter, which is used now in superconductors to make energy, the flow of electrical impulses through various materials, and it's used for development of new materials, metamaterials, and superconductive materials. So there's a stuff now called red matter, which is very interesting. And I'd like to know the history of, was that based on this idea of red mercury, or was it a completely separate thing? Because there are so many things that are in development that have graphene, for instance, is going to change the world. The material graphene is going to change the world. And inventions that are coming up now, new materials, new ways of shifting energy, which is going to change how we live. And so I'd like to know what the connection was, what the development trail was between that. Was it possibly now being used as some kind of anti-gravity device, or that apparently have been patented by the US Navy? So there's a lot of interesting esoteric history as well. Some of it I know about because I've been there, and some of it's been used. I have to be careful what I say. And no, I do, really, I do. And knowledge that was gleaned while I was working in a certain environment. So I can't say that. I mean, I could, if it turns up out there somewhere and somebody said, "Oh, do you know about this?" I say, "Yeah, I know what that is. Do you know how it works?" I actually probably don't know much about it. I'm not a physicist, so I don't know how it works. But I would say it doesn't have any wings. It appears to have no means of propulsion that we can tell. Yet apparently it's some kind of vehicle that is being proposed and is being tested that can stay aloft. How is that working? What is keeping that craft in the air? And so I could say that, but I couldn't say, well, I know for a fact that is this, that, the other, because that would get me in trouble, or where it came from. So
you're stuck.
Not really. No, there's always a mechanism. I say we got away with it in Hold Fast because I stuck to. Also, what people don't understand is your clearance runs out, or your access to material runs out after 5-year period. So after a 5-year period, it drops away anyway, unless you are re-vetted again. What's called vetting for, how can I say this? Because I don't even know whether that is classifying itself. There's a thing called positive vetting, and you're positively vetted up to a certain level, which is higher than your normal vetting level, which is what I was. And so I was a level above that. And so that process is it's a long process, and it costs a lot of money, and they interview a lot of people, and they go to see people, and they ask them about you, and they get a breakdown of your personality and who you are, what type of person, and they are warned, the people that they're interviewing, that they cannot tell you that they have been interviewed. This is how this all goes. So the people, they could go to your family members, or they could go to your best friends.
And they would not be able. That's got to be hard.
That they're not allowed to tell you that they have been interviewed regarding your security clearance. They're not supposed to tell you. So this is how weird and complicated it can all get. So
yes.
But anyway, but there are ways of doing it and saying things like you have to drop, like in the Pilgrim. I dropped loads of hints in the Pilgrim. There's so much stuff in the Pilgrim which is based on true
stories. I'm rereading the Pilgrim. Thank you very much.
Well, we use a lot of stuff in there. I mean, I talk about 0 point energy, and we talk about the bell thing that they go into so they can shift paradigms, dimensions. They're using that bell to shift dimensions. And we also talk about, this is one of the things I was trying to say to the guys at Skinwalker Ranch. We called them sentient exomorphic anomalies. So it's an actual, and one of the captures actually said, you would call them demons. We call them SEA, sentient exomorphic anomalies, because we don't know what they are. But we know that they're sentient, we know that they're intelligent, they're just not in our 3 dimensions of space and 1 of linear time, which is the only way we can view the universe. We as human beings can only see the universe in 3 dimensions of space and 1 of linear time. But right now we know that's not the only way the universe exists. It possibly exists in a multidimensional state all around us that we can't even view. And also, as we just talked about fate, the fact that we can affect that, we can send ripples through that multidimensional universe by how we act. And I have argued that consciousness, human consciousness, is the means by that we affect that universe. Because what's going on in here, although yes, it's going in your gray matter, but what's it gray matter made of? It's made of subatomic particles that were created at the Big Bang. So our consciousness, our very selves are connected at the most subatomic particle level in our brains to the Big Bang. We truly are made up of stardust.
And that is another thing you do that drives some people crazy. I have seen comments. You take spirituality when people say they can't mix and science.
Yep.
And mix them.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the only way. Once again, you've got the spiritual, the mental powers, the whatever. It all has to fit together.
Why does it drive them crazy? I'm fascinated now. Why would that drive people?
You get the comments of people like with your far off ideas and stuff. I see them on there. I mean, you argue them out or whatever.
I can't see them. I can't see the chat. So you have to say
no, not this chat. No. I mean, I've seen on I'm on social media and I do see other people's comments. I don't think there's one comment then, but I don't think that's there. I'm trying to. Everything is built on vibrational energy. Thank you, Tamara. No, I mean, I have seen. Okay, say for example, not you, but it was about one. It was about. Well, I think it was about the Wildwood Tarot. And anyways, it was on somebody else's page that you are familiar with. Okay. A friend, a pal. Okay. Anyways, I don't want to get other people involved in this. And this guy was talking about something and he said, well, I don't know who this Mark Ryan thinks he is. This is not, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm just saying with all his far off ideas, like I think it was the Wildwood, you go more into that in the workbook, Wildwood Magic and stuff like that. So he made a comment about, this far-fetched thinking of yours. And that is Vicky trying to say something without saying something wrong.
Well, let me deal with that issue. Okay, so Max, let me just deal with it. Max Tegmark is an MIT physicist. Right, you don't need to take my word for it. He comes up with theoretical ideas of how human consciousness interacts with any possible subatomic particle field. So you don't need to believe me. I'm not making this stuff up. I get this stuff from people like Rupert Sheldrake, who's a Cambridge biochemist who's written 7 books about the morphic field and morphic resonance. So I don't make this stuff up. I literally read experts like Tegmark, like
Yes,
Vicky
no.
people like that. I don't make this stuff up, and certainly in the subatomic particle physics world, quantum mechanics world, things are very strange. There is literally this quirkiness to the universe that if a particle over there knows something and does something, a particle over there, but it's on the other side of a galaxy or on the other side of a room, will do the same thing. Quantum entanglement. I didn't invent that. Geniuses invented that, but yet it exists apparently. So my ideas aren't that far out, and they're actually based on the work of stand on the shoulders of geniuses. So shout out to Max Tegmark, shout out to Rupert Sheldrake, Mickey Okuko. Those are the guys that I take my ideas from. So they're not far out. This is what geniuses come up with.
So strange commenter on a friend's Facebook page. Take that. Yeah, no, but it's the matter. It's the beast, as it were. You have an idea, you put it out there, and they're going to slosh it, right?
I don't mind, and I honestly, the only thing I don't take, from my father used to say, I'll take anything bar blows, and I don't mind questioning if it's done in a polite and intelligent manner. It's abuse, and this is what the internet has sort of opened up, the idea that you can just abuse people and you have a right to do it because you're sitting at home in whatever, and you can just and abuse people literally directly. I've never done it. I answer, if somebody insults me, I'll insult them back, but I try to avoid that kind of interaction because it's a waste of energy.
What it has destroyed, and what I'm trying to do with Fika is to have actual conversations, to have discussions. People now are confused that discussions, a difference of opinion, is an argument. And it's not an argument, it's a discussion. So we could disagree on something and totally respect each other or whatever, but and it's gone. It is completely gone. It's like you have to think what I think, or you can't be a decent human being, and I don't know where that came from.
Well, I have a theory, but I really don't want to open up a whole other can of worms here. But,
I hear what you're saying.
Sidestep politics, you know what I mean? I get enough about that. Trust me, politics. So I'm like, hey guys, I have a theory, but let's leave it.
I'm hearing you. And I think everybody's hearing you. So you don't have to actually
say it out loud.
Say it. Now, Mark, you have been a joy and a very nice guy for spending all this time. I know you're a busy man, and I respect that. But, in a couple years or so, I'm really going to want to chat again, okay? Especially if that new book comes out.
Well, it's sort of floating about there. We'll see. See how things go. We might do the podcast first. So I might be coming to you to promote my podcast, because I'm going to invite people after this discussion, after this chat. I'm going to go, okay, bring it on. Bring your stuff on. You know what I mean? And I'll chat to people about it. And we are working on doing a show regarding some of these very esoteric scientific ideas. We've been working on it now for several months and coming up with ideas for the show regarding. I won't say too much about it because I don't want to get the idea blown. But it's a lot of what we just talked about, and talking to people who work in the arenas as real scientists, to go, this is something we're already talking about. This is something we're working on. We're actually working. I wrote a screenplay years ago called Pendragon, where in the screenplay, I came up with what's a biologically grown human being. It's called Manchine. And I read last week that they've now got these blobs of brain that they've grown in petri dishes, which they're hoping to build to biomolecular computers. I wrote about that 40 years ago. People thought I was mad, writing that one day they will use brain matter as actually the biomolecular basis for a computing system and grow human beings that will be literally walking biomolecular computers and can shape shift and all kinds of stuff. At the time, it was far out. Not so far out now, is it? Artificial intelligence. Not so far out now.
No, and things have moved so quickly you can't even keep track of all the things that have happened. I mean, I often say, our parents were like, well, then we went from this to like television or whatever. No, our learning curve has been way bigger than that.
Yeah.
So
my 2-year-old daughter can pick up an iPad, flick through it, go through it now and go, I want to watch this. I want to watch Coco Melon. I want to watch this. I want to watch Sound of Music. She loves the Sound of Music. My daughter loves the sound. Oh, she Sound of Music and Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins and Sound of Music. She loves it.
I love the Sound of Music, but Mary Poppins has been my fave since as long as I can remember. It's a great. And so what? Speaking of your 2-year-old daughter, I want to point out something else that's happened just for a second. At the end of your introduction to Mark Ryan, hold fast.
Okay.
It says that your life, surreal and solitary most of it has been, but it is my life. Welcome. But you're not so solitary today.
No. Hey ho, I fell into something and I'm very happy. And a man of my age and caliber, who would have known it? You know what I mean? Yeah, no, we're very happy. We're in the midst of doing up my home in Las Vegas. That's being ripped apart right as we speak. And because I moved from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, and this house we have now in the Netherlands, this is being ripped apart, and walls are coming out and all that kind of stuff. So we're actually going to be homeless next month. So we're throwing ourselves on family and friends, and anybody else that will take us in. So we've got a tent. We'll bring a tent to your back garden if you like.
Oh yeah, I'm in there. But do make sure that you send links to. You were going to send some links to. Yvonne's work and Evita if we ever find that, but that's out there on the black market somewhere. I don't know.
It is. I'm afraid.
Yeah, that may be a little out of my.
I'm sworn to secrecy. It is out there. You can. There are groups actually on Facebook where you could probably jump in and join, and if you ask nicely, they'll probably send you it. So I just.
On the side, do you have a copy? So thank you very much, Mark. Hopefully we'll talk soon and we'll see you on a podcast. And
thank you. I hope we answered everybody's questions. If anybody's got questions that they want to send to you, and we can maybe do it in a letter, I'll try and write some stuff or do a different thing, whatever, a group chat or something, so that people can go, what are you talking about? Which is museum. There you go. What is he saying?
I can't even go through the last what we just went through and know what was said. Okay. It's just a blur. Okay.
Thank you so much. Bless you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that was fun. That was very, very fun and informative. So our guest next week is Christina Rose. She is the author of Twisted Veil and Black Pine Road. Christina is also an artist who has designed her own covers. So definitely looking forward to catching up with her, because we've done Fika before, and what's happening with her work. So till then, may your coffee be hot and your stories sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone.